The jungle grows over the stone. The vines pull down the temples. The cities are silent. For 1,000 years, the Mayan civilization stood as the brightest light in the Americas. They built cities bigger than London. They mapped the stars with perfect precision. They wrote history on stone when Europe was still in the dark. Then, in a single century, the light went out. The writing stops. The construction stops. The people vanish. The great cities of Tikal, Köpen, and Calakmul were abandoned. The jungle swallowed the roads. The temples became hills. For decades, historians told a simple story. They said the climate changed. They said the rain stopped. They said the farmers died, and the kings lost their power. It was a story of nature punishing man. It was a clean story. It made sense. The drought killed the corn. The corn killed the people. The people killed the kingdom. That was the textbook version. It was written in books. It was taught in schools. It was accepted as truth. Then a lab in Pennsylvania tested a specific thing. They took bone from a burial deep under the stone. They did not look at the corn. They did not look at the rain. They looked at the DNA inside the dead. The results did not match the story. The rain might have stopped, but the people did not die. They moved, they changed, they fought. The DNA revealed a secret that the stone could not tell. The collapse was not an end. It was a transformation. And the person at the center of this mystery was not a farmer. It was the king of Tikal. His lineage held the key. His bones held the code. For years, his dynasty ruled the jungle. Now, his genetic legacy speaks from the grave. The sample came from a grave under the temple of the jaguar. The bone was old. The DNA was broken. But the machine read the code. The code told a story of movement. The textbook version said the people stayed until they died. The DNA said the people left before the end. The specific number was shocking. 90% of the remains in the late period showed non-local markers. They were not born where they died. They came from the north. They came from the coast. They came from the highlands. This was not a slow decline. This was a sudden shift. The genetic analysis from burial sites showed a population swap. The locals were gone. The strangers were in the palace. This made the drought theory impossible to hold. If the rain stopped, everyone starves. The local farmer and the foreign king both need corn. But the DNA showed the foreign king survived. The local farmer disappeared. This was not nature. This was choice. This was power. The first crack appeared in the data. The population did not collapse from starvation. It collapsed from displacement. The bones in the royal tombs were not the bones of the builders. They were the bones of the replacements. That was the first crack. But when they tested more samples, the pattern got disturbing. The researchers went back to the ground. They needed more bones. They needed more cities. They started with Tikal. Tikal was the heart of the Mayan world. It was the New York of the ancient jungle. If the heart stopped, the body died. The team from Penn State University led the work. They focused on the residential zones. They did not look at the kings yet. They looked at the common people. The DNA from the common graves showed high diversity. In the early period, the genes were uniform. Everyone was related. Everyone was local. In the late period, the genes were mixed. Haplogroups from the Gulf Coast appeared. Haplogroups from the Western Highlands appeared. This meant migration. People were walking into the city. But why? The drought theory said people should flee. They should leave the city to find water. The DNA said people entered the city. They crowded into the dying center. This suggests conflict. People do not move into a disaster unless they are running from something worse. The genetic signal showed pressure. The population density increased right before the abandonment. The city became a refuge. Then it became a trap. And when researchers looked further, the story shifted again. They looked at the teeth. The teeth hold chemical signatures. The water you drink as a child stays in your enamel. The researchers tested the teeth of the elites. The elites drank water from the north. They grew up in the north. They died in Tikal. They were immigrants. They took the throne. They were not the original dynasty. They were the successors. But that wasn't the only surprise. The violence markers on the bones increased. The cut marks on the skeletons showed ritual killing. The DNA showed the victims were locals. The killers were the newcomers. The genetic divide matched the social divide. The new kings killed the old blood. This changes the timeline. The collapse was not slow. It was violent. It was surgical. The new lineage removed the old lineage. They took the city. Then they left it. 70%. That number would change the entire field. 70% of the late period elites showed foreign ancestry. This was not a trickle. This was a flood. The evidence seems overwhelming, but there is one problem nobody expected. The DNA proved migration. The DNA proved violence. The DNA proved replacement, but it did not prove invasion. This is the twist. The textbook version said outsiders attacked. The new version said outsiders moved in. But the DNA showed the outsiders were related to the locals. They were not a different species. They were not a different nation. They were Mayan. They spoke the same language. They prayed to the same gods. The haplogroup does not equal a nationality. A genetic marker from the north does not mean an army from the north. It means a family from the north. The twist is internal. The collapse was a family feud. The dynasty of Tikal split. The brothers fought. The cousins fought. The genetic evidence shows close kinship between the attackers and the victims. They were cousins, they were uncles, they were sons. The war was not between cities. It was within the bloodline. The foreign king was actually a relative. He claimed the throne through marriage. He claimed the throne through force. The DNA confirms the lineage. It confirms the connection. But it also confirms the break. The social structure failed. The king could not hold the family. The family could not hold the people. The genetic similarity makes the violence more intimate. It was not a conquest. It was a divorce. The city divorced its rulers. The rulers divorced their kin. This nuance is critical. If it were an invasion, the culture would change. The language would change. The style would change. But the style remained. The language remained. The DNA changed, but the culture stayed. This means the people accepted the new kings. They accepted the new blood. Until they didn't. Then they left. The DNA shows the people left after the new kings arrived. The kings stayed in the empty palace. The people walked into the jungle. The kings were alone. That contradiction changes everything. And 5 dig sites across 3 regions prove exactly how. The first site is Tikal, the Great Jaguar Paw Temple, the burial of King Jasaw Chan Kawil. His DNA was not tested directly, but his lineage was traced through his descendants. The later burials in his complex show the shift. The bones from the late period show the foreign markers. The institution leading this was the University of Arizona. They focused on the oxygen isotopes. The oxygen in the bone tells you where the water came from. The water in Tikal is distinct. The water in the north is distinct. The late kings drank northern water. They were raised in the north. They came to Tikal to rule. They died in Tikal. Their children died in Tikal. Then the line stops. The next burial is empty. The tomb is sealed. No body. This suggests the last king fled. He did not die in the palace. He ran. The DNA from the surrounding graves supports this. The commoners left first. The elites left last. The king was the last to go. This tells us the order of collapse. The food stopped. The people left. The king stayed. The king waited for the rain. The rain did not come. The king ran. That was Tikal. But Köppen told an even stranger story. Köppen is in the west. It is near the river. It should have survived the drought. The water was there. The corn could grow, but Köppen collapsed too. The DNA from Köppen shows no drought stress in the bones. The health was good, the diet was stable, but the violence was high. The bones show trauma. The heads were crushed. The spines were broken. This was not starvation. This was execution. The genetic markers showed the victims were local Copan elites. The killers were from Tikal. The Tikal dynasty expanded. They took Copan, they killed the Copan kings, they installed their own family. Then Copan collapsed. Why? Because the people rejected the foreign king. The DNA shows the population remained local. The kings changed. The people did not. The people refused to feed the foreign king. They stopped the supply. The king starved in the palace. The people walked away. This is a social collapse, not an environmental one. The environment was fine. The society broke. The trust broke. The people stopped believing the king could protect them. The DNA proves the king was foreign. The people knew. They resisted. They left. That was Copan. But Chichen Itza told a third story. Chichen Itza is in the north. It rose after the south fell. The DNA from Chichen Itza shows a mix. It shows the survivors from the south. It shows the locals from the north. The collapse of the south fed the rise of the north. The people moved. They did not die. They walked to Chichen Itza. They built new temples. They wrote new history. The genetic link is clear. The people of Chichen Itza are the descendants of Tikal. The city changed. The people survived. The collapse was a migration. The jungle swallowed the stone, but the bloodline continued. That was Chichen Itza, but Cebol told the darkest story. Cebol is in the lowlands. It was a trade hub. The DNA from Cebol shows the highest diversity. People from everywhere were there. It was a cosmopolitan center, but the end was brutal. The bones show mass graves. The DNA shows families killed together. Men, women, children, all together. This was not battle. This was massacre. The genetic markers show no distinction. Everyone was killed. The locals and the foreigners. The kings and the farmers. The city was wiped out. No survivors. This suggests a plague or a total war. The DNA cannot distinguish plague. It only shows death, but the lack of survivors suggests something catastrophic. A fire, a poison, a complete removal. Cebol was erased. Tikal was abandoned. Copan was rejected. Chichen Itza was rebuilt. Every site pointed the same direction. The full picture is more disturbing than any single finding. The pattern is clear. The Mayan world did not die. It fractured. The DNA reveals a network of cities connected by blood. When one city failed, the blood moved to the next. The kings tried to hold the network. They married their daughters to other kings. They mixed the DNA. They created a genetic web. This web held the civilization together. When the drought came, the web stretched. When the war came, the web snapped. The DNA shows the snapping point. It shows where the lines broke. The break was not at the border, it was at the palace. The king could not manage the family. The family managed the king. The genetic evidence shows cousins ruling rival cities. They were supposed to allies, they became enemies. The DNA proves the kinship. The history proves the war. The combination proves the tragedy. They fought their own blood. They destroyed their own network. The environment was the trigger. The drought made the corn scarce. The scarcity made the kings fight. The fight broke the network. The network break caused the collapse. The drought was the spark. The family feud was the fire. The DNA shows the fire came from inside. This is the deeper truth. Civilization is not stone. Civilization is trust. The stone stands, the trust fades. When the trust fades, the people leave. The DNA proves the people left. They did not vanish. They walked. They went to the coast. They went to the north. They went to the highlands. They took their genes with them. They took their language with them. They took their memory with them. The modern Mayan people are the descendants of the collapse. They are not the ruins. They are the living. The DNA connects the ancient bone to the modern hand. The link is unbroken. The collapse was not an extinction. It was a dispersal. The cities were the shells. The people were the spirit. The spirit moved. The shells remained. The jungle took the shells. The spirit survived. This changes how we see history. We look for death. We find movement. We look for ends. We find changes. The Mayan collapse is not a mystery of disappearance. It is a mystery of adaptation. They adapted to the drought. They adapted to the war. They adapted by leaving. The DNA proves the adaptation. The genes are here. The people are here. The culture is here. The stone is gone. What this means is simple. We are looking for the wrong thing. We are looking for the body. The body is in the ground. We should look for the life. The life is in the descendants. The tweetable insight is this: civilizations do not die when the stones fall. They die when the people stop believing in the story. The Mayans stopped believing in the king. The king lost the story. The people found a new story. They found a new place. They found a new life. The DNA proves the story changed. The blood proves the life continued. That is what the DNA proved. But there is one thing nobody can explain yet. The DNA shows the movement. It shows the mixing. It shows the survival. But it does not show the decision. Why did they leave? The bones show the path. They do not show the mind. We know they moved. We do not know why they chose to move. Was it fear? Was it hope? Was it mingling? The DNA cannot tell us the thought. It tells us the action. The action was migration. The thought is hidden. The archaeologists find the pots. The pots show the style. The style changed. The thought changed. But the DNA is silent on the motive. It records the biology. It does not record the psychology. This is the limit of the science. The science gives us the map. It does not give us the reason. We know the king was foreign. We know the people left. We do not know the conversation between them. Did the king beg them to stay? Did the people curse the king? The silence of the DNA is loud. It tells us what happened. It does not tell us why it happened. This is the gap between the bone and the mind, the gap between the gene and the choice. Researchers are trying to fill it. They look at the art. They look at the writing. The writing says the gods were angry. The art shows the kings crying. The DNA shows the kings moving. The combination suggests a spiritual crisis. The kings lost the gods. The people lost the kings. The gods did not send the rain. The kings could not make the rain. The trust broke. The DNA confirms the break, but it cannot measure the trust. Trust is not genetic. Trust is social. The DNA proves the social structure failed. It does not prove the feeling. The feeling is lost. The feeling is in the air. The feeling is in the wind. The feeling is gone. This is the mystery. The physical evidence is complete. The emotional evidence is missing. We have the map of the body. We lack the map of the heart. This is why the story continues. We have the facts. We lack the meaning. The meaning is what we seek. The meaning is why we watch. The meaning is why we study. We want to know how they felt. We want to know what they thought. We want to know if they were afraid. The DNA says they moved. The heart says they were afraid. The fear is universal. The fear is human. The fear is why we listen. The fear is why we care. The Mayan collapse is our collapse. The Mayan fear is our fear. The stone falls. The rain stops. The king fails. We ask, will we leave? Will we survive? Will we move? The DNA says yes. The DNA says we move. The DNA says we survive. The DNA says we change. This is the comfort. This is the hope. The civilization ends. The people continue. The blood flows. The blood finds a new path. The blood finds a new home. The Mayan blood is in the modern world. It is in Guatemala. It is in Mexico. It is in Belize. It is in the United States. It is in the labs. It is in the machines. It is in the data. The data speaks. The data tells the story. The story is not over. The story is continuing. The collapse was a chapter. The survival is the book. The book is open. The book is being written. The writers are the descendants. The writers are the living. The writers are us. We read the DNA. We read the bone. We read the stone. We write the future. The future is the next phase. The next phase is unknown. The next phase is DNA. The next phase is us. Subscribe to follow the next chapter. The next video explores the next migration. The next migration is the modern world. The modern world is moving. The modern world is changing. The modern world is collapsing. The pattern repeats. The pattern is ancient. The pattern is new. The pattern is DNA. The pattern is life. The pattern is you.